Good evening, folks. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels. We are going back to that horrible world known as the JRC, but before we do the usual disclaimers, if you're unfamiliar with the Stop the Shocks campaign or the campaign against the troubled teen industry, you're going to find all the pertinent links right there in the description box. Please, in particular, take note of the article written by Neuroclastic, a small non-for-profit started by autistics for autistics. In it, they interviewed over 800 ABA professionals in regards to the JRC's so-called behavior modification program. The Judge Rothberg Educational Center doesn't want you to read that article so much. They threatened Neuroclastic with a defamation lawsuit if they did not remove it from the website. Neuroclastic refused, so you know the drill, folks. Please read the article. Share on all your social media. Also included is Neuroclastic's public statement regards to the defamation lawsuit threat, as well as a link to their GoFundMe. We are crowdfunding just in case the JRC ever actually does see through with their threat. Trigger warning 1. When we talk about places like the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center or Agape Boarding School for Boys, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of and catch clips or surveillance footage of people with mental health issues and disabled people being tortured and abused. If you got young children present, please make sure to go ahead and use the headphones. Trigger warning 2. This channel is marked not for kids for a reason. We use profanity on occasion and speak on dark subjects. If your child is 16 and younger and they are watching this, very obviously, parental supervision is very much advised. Trigger warning 3. We are going back to the same tried and true nonsense that the JRC likes to do so damn much. So what that means is they are playing fast and loose with HIPAA policy by trying to use individual stories, highlighting and making seem as horrible as possible any of our, well, not neurotypical traits, in order to try and convince us that because of this, we should leave these kids to them, and that shocking them is really the only thing that's going to work. Bullshit. We all know it's bullshit. At the very least, the math isn't mathing, but we're going to get ready to go through it. So, folks, get you some kava tea, heat it up, come back to the channel, take me off a pause, because the stupid is coming. Alright, L.E. From the time L.E. was 18 months old, she exhibited aggressive behaviors including kicking, biting, scratching, and hair pulling. Is that supposed to be shocking? Is that supposed to shock and disturb me? Have you ever been around any kids that are 3 years old and younger? I've got at least 4 or 5 nephews and nieces. You know, I got to participate when they were young kids. They're neurotypical. One used to like to run at full speed head down into walls. The other had a very, very nerve-wracking habit of trying, when they were teething, to eat anything they came in contact with. Let's see here. Almost getting their hands burned off by getting ready to touch a hot stove. But what about the kidding, biting, scratching, hair pulling? They're fucking kids. I hate to burst y'all's medical model into shreds here, but literally, so does every single other kid on planet fucking Earth. Okay? Please. Now, I know you're going to say, but it's not as extreme. It's more noticeable. Duh. We're autistic. We're not trying to hide shit. We don't even know that it is shit that we need to hide. So yeah, it probably is going to be more noticeable than with your neurotypical kid who knows that they at least need to put a little bit of a lid on it. Okay? But using that as a way to tar the victim over, thinking that reporting things in such a way is going to make me look at that kid and say, well, obviously this is too severe and they have to go over to the JRC so that they can, abuse the disability out of them. I'm going to need you to put down the crack. Back away from the crack. Steer clear of the hallucinogens. And whatever you do, stay away from meth crystals. Okay? There are certain things that we do that get blown way out of proportion. Because when you see it, yeah, it does look disturbing. But if we are to think critically here, instead of under this never-ending fear-mongering that media likes to get into, so they can continue to rake in the billions every single year tax-free, they're going to use what is actually considered pretty normal for literally any human kid about that age, and they're going to try to make it like the most worst abomination that's out of control ever. It's nonsense. Okay? It's nonsense. And the reason why you notice it with us more than you do with a neurotypical kid within that same age range is because we don't try to hide that shit. Okay? We're the ones that, if we pull your hair, are not going to immediately turn around as soon as the parents eyeball us and said it wasn't me. Okay? Spare me. This is that double standard shit I've talked about so much on this channel, where if we engage in a particular behavior for whatever reason, our reaction, our emotions are always blown way the fuck out of proportion. But if it's a neurotypical person in that same incident, even when their reaction is identical, they do not receive the same type of scrutiny or attention than when we do it. In fact, I can tell you, except for when it comes to my mom at least, more than likely those types of actions are not going to follow the neurotypical kid around for the rest of their lives. People like me, however, can go into the shrink's office fucking tomorrow, and they're going to ask me whether I've had the urge to stab any Ottomans lately. An incident that took place over 20 years ago in my early teens. And I'm going to keep getting asked about that incident and several others like it for the rest of my fucking life. We need to stop the double standard bullshit. But people like the JRC use it as a mere means of fear-mongering. And why do they do that? Because that's where the money is, baby. That's where the money is. If they report on all of these things, without the proper context of what's going on. Because we already have the label of autistic on us. You see where I'm going here, right? Right? Yeah, I thought so. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the double standards. I'm tired of the fact that I can engage in a quote unquote behavior and have everybody and their mother scrutinizing me until doomsday. A neurotypical could pull the same type of behavior, but for them, it's completely normal and understandable. They just need to not get so mad next time. Okay? If we want to progress in regards to treatment, for folks like myself, those of us, regardless of where we are, depending on the day on the spectrum, we gotta stop this shit. Because it is not right that every single one of our sins is going to follow us around till the day we die, when neurotypicals within our same age range are participating in the exact same damn behavior and nobody even blinks an eyelid. I'm sorry, but pisses me all the way off. All the way off. Okay? Now, in situations, is it more severe sometimes? Yes. I'm not going to tell you it isn't. It's probably not normal that a preteen girl is able to pick up an old school, late 1980s, early 90s couch, pick it up, throw it like it's a shot put, right directly into the wall. Okay? No, that's not normal. I'll give you that. But the problem is they don't just focus on that type of behavior. It's literal nitpicking. And when the nitpicking is done, it is done in such a way that is so condescending and made to sound so apocalyptic. Because again, it's where the money is, isn't it? If the JRC can convince us this has a twofold benefit for them, if they can convince us that somehow those kids they have on those devices and their behaviors are so severe that the only thing that as a person like me would respond to stop that behavior is violence, or if it's more like autism speaks, because they use that fear mongering every godforsaken goddamn April as a means to get people to part with their hard-earned money to fill their coffers while it continues to sit there and do absolutely nothing for families. I will go into depth on that someday, hopefully. But yeah, there's a thing where we can have very normal childhood behavior. But if there is a label involved, it is seen very differently by the world than a neurotypical child engaging in the exact same behavior. Okay? Alright, let's continue here because I'm sorry, that just pisses me all the way off. Let me continue. LE's primary diagnosis is mild intellectual disability, but she suffers from a range of problems resulting in a multiple additional diagnoses. Oh, the horror! Alright, neurotypicals. Is there a single person that you know and have spoken to that doesn't have comorbid conditions? Comorbid diagnoses? It's actually extremely common. Whether there's one label that's called AUTHD. 3 guesses what that one is. That is when you have 2 comorbid neurodivergent disabilities: autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Okay? It's called AUTHD. It's found a little bit more prominence within the last few years. It's a little bit harder to detect because there is so many crossovers in regards to ADHD and autism, and so much overlapping that it doesn't surprise me that it's just now when we are beginning to understand that some of us have both. Also, another thing, there is quite a few folks autistic and bipolar, or like mine, autistic, post-traumatic stress disorder with OCD tendencies, and clinical depression. Most of us have comorbid diagnoses. This is actually normal, but this is what these charlatans do. They try to paint the most bleak picture humanly possible and then use that as a weapon to bludgeon the public with. And unfortunately, the public, although they know about autism, they know of its existence and not what it actually is. Right? Yeah. Okay. Let me continue here. LE was asked to leave a small family daycare program because of her problem behaviors. Here we go again. Question. Before she was sent to that day program, and yes, JRC, I know what the fuck they are. I had to visit them quite frequently on a week-to-week basis because my job encompassed 25% of my state's consumers. Yeah. Did LE, before she was put into that day program, have a full functional behavioral assessment done by an objective third-party clinic? Yes or no? Yes or no? If the answer is no, that doesn't mean then the idea is to throw them into your school and watch them be tortured, starved, and sleep deprived to death. And no matter what kind of horror story you try to paint, you will never, ever convince someone like me that the GED or any of the other weird shit you all get up to is the answer to these quote-unquote problems. Because I know better. I have dealt with kids that have all the issues that the JRC brings up, while they're still trying to convince us that it's this small subgroup where nothing else works. I'm sorry, but the autism spectrum doesn't fucking work that way. I guarantee you, there are other kids with this diagnosis all over the world with those very same issues that are right now, while we're talking, being successfully treated without threats of violence, torture, starvation. Okay? I need to put that on a loop and have a bullhorn attached to it and just blast it 24/7 till the trumpet sounds and we all die. Or, God can be kind and just go ahead and send the goddamn comet already. Humanity's had a good run, but thinking Ellie's aggression could be the result of a language deficit, her mother took Ellie to the Boston Children's Hospital to be evaluated, and Ellie began receiving early intervention speech therapy. Ellie was also evaluated by an occupational therapist and received sensory integration therapy. Jesus fucking Christ. Alright, folks. I know. You're sitting there. Well, Tiffany, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with it is the word I think. They didn't know. They thought. Okay? This parent was not advised to get a proper full functional behavioral assessment done. Because of that, the parent is guessing. And guessing in regards to this, and you get them over there, and the behaviors are still there, for some reason, to these folks, it doesn't occur to them that what they thought was the problem is not what the problem is. The worst thing when it comes to medicine is dealing with folks who think they know what the problem is. Because 9 times out of 10, they're completely wrong. Parents doing guesswork and throwing kids into multiple different programs, community-based or otherwise, is how the fuck we got here. The full point of the full behavioral, what that assessment is for, is legitimately this. It is to dig in and find out if that's what's causing these aggressive or self-abusive issues, or if there's some other trigger. You can't just throw a kid from program to program guessing and then be shocked when nothing's working. No shit, Sherlock. And the fact that here again, we're having another situation with this predatory JRC preying on these poor parents' vulnerabilities, preying on their ignorance in regards to the service system, to sell them unicorns, rainbows, and lies. Yeah. Yeah. Parents, direct care staff, clinicians, doctors, stop with be assuming that you know what the problem is. Because you don't. And you're not going to until you get that kid assessed properly from a third-party clinic where the JRC isn't outside the door rubbing their hands together about the $283,000 they're going to get off that poor kid that year before they torture them into insanity. And really, with this paragraph, I'm going to end it here soon pretty quick, but that's what's going on here. The problem is, I've also worked in this field. And I know what it's looked like when the steps are followed in the way that they are supposed to be followed. I also know what happens when the steps are not followed. The parents are not told, they're not having clinics recommended to them to get those proper assessments. Yeah. That's a pretty scary ass situation when you have all these people pointing out every single quote unquote horribly wrong thing with their kid, and you are giving them no direction of any kind. Oh, here's a day program. Go enroll them in that. Okay. What does that day program specialize in? Well, I don't know. It's a day program. That's my point. That's my point. I don't care how severe you want to paint a human being. And remember JRC. I've gone to the homes, done one-on-ones with all direct care staff and what have you, with kids as quote-unquote severe as the one you're talking to about now. But no matter how severe the behavior is, the steps are the steps for a reason. The reason why these kids keep getting bounced from school to school to school is because due diligence is not being done for the parents here. These parents need resources and guides. They need somebody there like I had that told my family that I needed to get that behavioral functioning assessment done. And that is something that should be done before you even begin to talk about day programs, community-based programs, or residential programs. Because if you don't, you have parents guessing and praying Hail Marys. And it becomes very easy to understand why they are getting bounced from school to school to school, no matter how highly rated that school is, because there's no foundation. There is nothing there to be able to look back at. No sort of guide that is what the assessment is, by the way, to help determine which program is going to best suit those issues that their kids have. Without it, they are going to bounce from school to school to school. The behaviors are going to get worse, are going to become more aggressive, going to be more self-abusing. Because nobody has gone and did the homework as to what's triggering those behaviors in the first place. You can't just throw your kid from special ed program to special ed program, say a Hail Mary, and expect it to work. But I don't blame the parents for this. Screw it. I'll bury myself in my own hole here. It's the fucking schools. Most of these parents are usually informed by school officials that they think the kid might be autistic. With mine, they then got my mom and everybody in touch with Burl. And then I went through the whole diagnosis process. After that, Burl guided us over to our regional Missouri Department of Developmental Disorders and Mental Health. That's where the full functional behavioral assessment was done. And then after that was done, information was put out in front of us with different programs that, with the evidence that we now had from that assessment, could best inform us on what program was going to work the best for me. Okay? So JRC, you saying that they've tried everything, been to school, nothing's working but violence, it doesn't pass the sniff test. Okay? And it doesn't surprise me that that's happening, because you already have parents starting on the wrong foot. They are literally engaging in guesswork, and there is no one there to guide them. There's no one there to tell them that they need to get that assessment done. They don't even know where to go to get that kind of assessment done. Because the school's real responsibility in situations like this is to tell the parents what they think is going on, and then guide them to a clinic, a practice, what have you, so that they can proceed with the steps from there. School's job is not to tell the parents, I think this is wrong with your kid. We're going to throw them in a random daycare and pray that it works. And then somehow are miraculously surprised when they've gone from school to school to school to school, and then the behavior is becoming worse and worse and worse. It's the frustration, folks. It's the agitation, the frustration of a poor kid dealing with program after program that's doing nothing to help them deal with their issues. It's too many people playing guesswork. So no, JRC, this little story here about LE, excuse me if I don't seem impressed. Nor if that were LE coming into my office back in the day, would I see that as a situation? Well, obviously we need to hand her off to the JRC so she can be tortured into proper behavior. If any word of that was ever suggested to me in my office, let's just be glad it never was. Because I would have come over that fucking desk and tackled you like a linebacker. I don't play when it comes to my people. Alright. So, we're going to go ahead and close out. Very obviously, the JRC is relying on their old tactic of trying this fear-mongering by trying to blow out a portion to scare parents and scare the general public by painting the issues as bleak as humanly possible, and then acting like an entire school with a bizarre savior complex, with a severe splash of Joseph Mengele. And I don't say that lightly, folks. All right, we're going to go ahead and close out for tonight. We don't get very many views on this channel. The few we do tend to get removed from time to time. So, folks, please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe. Don't forget to get those comments. I do appreciate your time this evening. As always, folks, we here at Spilling Tea do hope you can have a good one. I will see you all next time. Bye-bye, everyone.